All right, as promised in my last video, I want to look at another topic in our Why I Am Not a Calvinist series, and it's very similar to the last one we looked at. Last time we looked at John chapter 10, where Jesus said that some people did not believe because they were not of his sheep, and I'd encourage you to go back and find that video. But today we're going to look at a similar passage just a couple of chapters later, and this one is in John chapter 12. And what's going on here is Jesus has just performed many miracles. In fact, he raised Lazarus from the dead. So he performed all these miracles, and people were watching him, but they didn't believe who he was, even though they saw all these miracles. And so we're going to actually go now to our passage here, which is John chapter 12, and we're going to pick it up in verse 36. And he says this: "Well, you have the light, believe in the light, that you may become sons of light. These things Jesus spoke and departed and was hidden from them." So when he's talking about the light, he's talking about himself. He came to show the light of God, and he proved who he was by doing his miracles, and they rejected that light. So let's continue on here. Verse 37, "But although he had done so many signs before them, they did not believe in him, that the word of Isaiah the prophet might be fulfilled, which he spoke. Lord, who has believed our report? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed?" Therefore, they could not believe, because Isaiah said again, "He has blinded their eyes and hardened their hearts, lest they should see with their eyes, lest they should understand with their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them." And so what we have here is it looks like we have a situation where Jesus is saying, look, you guys cannot believe in me. And so John is writing this down, and he's using the example of Isaiah. He's using what Isaiah said as an illustration. So what I want to do, because he's using Isaiah as an illustration, I want to go back and look at what Isaiah actually said and what he actually meant there. So let's go actually to Isaiah chapter 6, which is where he's quoting from. And this is when Isaiah gets a vision of the throne room of God. So he goes in the throne room of God, and he sees the great glory of God, and God asks for a volunteer. Who will go out for me? Who will go out and send my message? And Isaiah, being the only one there, he's kind of volunteered for this job. And so he says here in Isaiah chapter 6, verse 8, it says, "Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then I said, here am I, send me. And he said, go and tell this people, keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, but do not perceive. Make the heart of this people dull and their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their heart and return and be healed." So Isaiah has this incredible job here of going out and telling these people, look, you need to listen to my message, but you're not supposed to believe. Why would he do that? I mean, does not God want his people to turn from their rebellion and turn to him? But he tells Isaiah, go out there and tell these people, look, I'm going to make your heart dull. I'm going to make your heart heavy. I'm going to blind your eyes so you can't see. Why would he do something like this? So we have to understand, when we're trying to figure out why is John using this illustration from Isaiah, what is he talking about here? And so there's a couple of things that we need to actually answer here about this passage in Isaiah. First, why should Isaiah make them unable to understand? Why is God telling Isaiah, make these people so they can't understand? And the second, how in the world is he going to do that? Well, the answer to the second question is actually very easy. How he was going to do it, he was just going to do it by preaching. God says, Isaiah, go out there and preach. And as you preach, you're going to drive these people further into hardening of their hearts, because I've talked to them and they don't listen. And I keep sending them prophets and they don't listen to me. They know what's right and they don't do it. So you keep preaching and that will turn them further away. So that returns us to our first question is, why would God do this? Why would God not just keep giving them more information, hoping that they will turn to him? Or in the case of election, if this was actually a salvation context we're talking about here, why wouldn't God just choose them and make them saved, right? So I think the answer to the question of why would God do this is actually in the question. Because the question is, why would God push them further into rebellion? And the answer is that they were already in rebellion. These people had listened to what God had said so many times. They'd seen things that he had done, just like in John, and they refused to obey. So God says, Isaiah, you keep preaching to them, and you keep pushing them further in the direction that they wanted to go. It's like oftentimes someone will come to me and they'll talk about a family member who's not a believer or someone who's off in sin, and they'll say, "What should I do?" And my advice to them is don't push them too hard because you're just going to push them away. Show your love to them. They know what's the truth. They know they can come to you when they have a need, but don't just keep pushing. Don't preach to them. Don't sit down every Thanksgiving meal and have to give them a whole gospel salvation, because you're just going to push them away. You want them to come. But what Jesus is doing and what Isaiah is doing in this particular situation, what God is doing through Isaiah, is exactly the opposite. He is saying, Isaiah, you go out and you preach to these people, because the more you preach to them, the more it is going to drive them away from me. Now, that might not seem like the God we know, but God is it's like he's drawn a line in the sand. You guys have made the choice. You are not responding to what I told you, and now you just can go on the way that you want to go. We actually also see this over in the book of Romans in chapter 1. Chapter 1, verse 28 says, even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting. And read that whole chapter. It just shows how he lets them go on their sin and then get the rewards, the punishment for the route that they've chosen to take. Now, before we actually return to John 12, I want to stop off and look at the book of Acts, because in the book of Acts, we'll see another situation where Isaiah is used here, and this is by Paul. Acts chapter 28, and starting in verse 24, Paul has been, he's just gone to Rome, in kind of a prisoner, gone to Rome, and he's called some Jews together, and he's explained to them about how he's in prison because of his passion for the Jewish people. And some people listened to what he said, some people believe, and some people didn't believe. And so that's where we pick up here. And some were persuaded by the things which were spoken, and some disbelieved. So when they did not agree among themselves, they departed after Paul had said one word. The Holy Spirit spoke rightly through Isaiah the prophet, our father, saying, now this is where he quotes Isaiah, go to this people and say, hearing you will hear and shall not understand, and seeing you will see and not perceive, for the hearts of this people have grown dull, their ears are hearing, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes and hear with their ears, lest they should understand with their hearts and turn, so that I should heal them. And I point that out because in here, it's pretty clear there where it says, and their eyes they have closed. So as Paul is quoting Isaiah, he's pointing out that these people have closed their own eyes. And he's doing this whole context of Isaiah. Paul is talking about these people who have, they've heard all these things. He said, look, you guys, you're just not going to believe. You're just like the people that Isaiah was talking to. The more he preached, the more they disbelieved. But what's interesting there is Paul is pointing out that their eyes, they have closed. It's not like back in Isaiah that God had blinded their eyes and said, no, look, you guys can't believe. No, they've closed their own eyes. And therefore, God says, I'm going to send you the message that will continue to drive you further and further into your rebellion, so you get the punishment that you deserve. Now, let's go back to John chapter 12 again. John chapter 12. As we read on, we're going to see that it was their own rejection of Jesus that doomed them. This is just a little bit further in John chapter 12, verse 44. Then Jesus cried out and said, he who believes in me believes not in me, but in him who sent me. And he who sees me sees him who sent me. I have come as a light into the world, that whoever believes in me should not abide in darkness. And if anyone hears my words and does not believe, I do not judge him, for I did not come to judge the world, but to save the world. He who rejects me and does not receive my words has that which judges him. The word that I have spoken will judge him the last day. So Jesus isn't saying, look, I have chosen that some people could not believe, or God has chosen that some people could not believe. He's saying, I have put it out there, and some of you chose not to believe me. So what was John talking about when he said, when he's copying Isaiah and he's saying, look, I'm going to go out and I'm going to preach to people and they're not going to believe? What I think he's saying here is the same thing that we see in Isaiah. We see it in John with Jesus' audience there. We see it with Paul, and we see it in the book of Romans. These people had the truth. They had the light. There was something they saw that they knew was true, and they rejected it. They said, I don't want that. I don't want to believe it. And so God kept sending the message. And the point was, the more you hear the message, the more is going to drive you further away from me. So to sum it up, I don't think that this is a situation where God is choosing some people. You will not be able to believe, and you can believe. I don't think that's the point at all. I think he is looking at people who have made the decision to reject what they knew, and he says, I'm going to just keep pushing you in that direction so you get the punishment that you deserve. Well, that's it for today. Hope you'll join me the next time. God bless.